The second film was obviously over the top 80s gratuitous action at the height. I mean, the second and third film at the height of 80s action flicks. Guys, Final Death Star. Let's talk Rambo, shall we? So I saw Rambo yesterday, and The Last Blood. If it is indeed The Last Blood, it seems like a pretty good place to end it. However, spoiler alert, Sly did say there's a possibility maybe he'd come back, so we'll kind of have to wait and see what happens. But I think as far as the story goes, it was a good place to end it. I thoroughly enjoyed it, despite critic reviews. I thought it was action-packed, entertaining, exactly what you would want and expect from a Rambo movie. It's Rambo. Have you seen the other Rambo films? They're violent, they're gory, it's gratuitous, it's a throwback to the bygone, era of the 80s action flicks. It's exactly what you want to see out of a Rambo movie. And I think critics have to judge it based on what it is. I understand if you want to judge it based on the genre and put it up against the other Rambo films, then fine. We could talk critiques on that scale. But if you're going to just say, the classic, it's racist and misogynistic and bigoted, all that stuff, it's just, that's so crazy because it's not, first of all, but it's a Rambo film. Judge it based on the genre it's in and compared to the other Rambo films. And, I think we'd have a different story as far as the media's response to this film goes. So on Rotten Tomatoes here, it's currently sitting at a 27 on the tomato meter from critics. 27% splat. It is a green splat. And that's just beyond me. 27%, that's a terrible film. They're saying this is a terrible film. Yet the audience score is 85%. Now, if you compare this with the original First Blood, the first Rambo movie, audience score is the same, 85%. The tomato meter is at 87% for critics. So from 87 to a 27, that is such a drastic change. And the first movie is great. I just rewatched it last night because I was in the Rambo mood, so I'm going through a little marathon right now. And I watched the original one, and compared to the new one, the story's different. It's a different time period. It deals more with this soldier who's coming back and has found himself lost in his own country, where they don't seem to want him. He's a wanderer, a drifter, and then the sheriffs in this town. White sheriffs in a small town, I might add, are who persecute him, and then he seeks his revenge, his vengeance on them. If you look at all the Rambo films, he goes after. Well, first of all, they're all bad people. He goes after different groups. He's not a as they're trying to paint him out to be this racist guy or the director or writer of the movie, because he goes after the cartel, Mexican cartel in this film, and they're sex traffickers. But if you want to just go by race alone, he goes after small town white men in the first movie, and they're sheriffs. But yet 87%, no one was saying how this movie depicts all small-town white sheriffs as bigoted, as hate-filled. I read through some of these early reviews, and I didn't see any reviews that talked about that. Oh, it's painting, these white sheriffs, all white sheriffs of a small town, as bigoted, and it didn't. None of the reviews say that. But then when it comes to this film, The Last Blood, all of a sudden it's painting all Mexicans as terrible. And I mean, there were only two groups of Mexicans that it really focused on. It was the grandmother, Rambo's niece, the reporter that helps him along, and the cartel. that was it. It was pretty much just two groups. It didn't deal with Mexico as a whole. It dealt with two groups of people, and they dealt with them very differently. The family and the reporter were very smart. All females, I might add, were very smart, were very strong people. I mean, the reporter saves his life basically at one point, brings him back to health, despite the risk to her own life, that or her own well-being that she could have put herself into by doing that. It portrays them very strong, a very strong point of view for them. And of course, the cartel, they're scumbags who get what they've got coming to them. So I just don't understand how the critics are saying this paints all Mexicans as racist, and it's a one-sided. I don't agree with that, especially when you're not going to say, well, it paints all white sheriffs of a small town the same way. In the second film, he goes back to Vietnam, and then he goes to the Middle East in the third film, and then Thailand in the fourth film. And it just to have a 27% is so insanely low, and it's so misrepresents this film, because clearly the audience score is 85. I mean, it's a Rambo film. You're not looking for an amazing story, although I think the first movie had a great story, but this has a story that is heartfelt enough. If you want to critique it based on the other films, it does lack a little bit of heart and awareness of the issue that it's trying to kind of deal with. I don't think it deals too much with the sex trafficking issue. It kind of, it gives you a little brief glimpse into it, and then Rambo goes on a rampage and takes them all out. So it doesn't really get into the issue too much, where I think the first film dealt a lot more with the veterans returning, feeling lost, being persecuted in America, being forgotten by their country. The second film was obviously over the top 80s gratuitous action at the height. I mean, the second and third film at the height of 80s action flicks. So it didn't really deal with that issue as much, but the first film definitely does. So you could say that this film lacks that awareness of the social issue that it's dealing with. The first film has that great scene, the great monologue with Stallone breaking down basically and pouring his heart out. You see how damaged he is from war. And in this film, it's kind of like he's been so jaded by it that he's managed to kind of keep himself away until something happens that inevitably drags him back in, and of course he goes full on Rambo rage mode. So I just can't believe it's at a 27% from critics. It's obvious there's an agenda there to try to push down a bygone era, this male action hero of a bygone era. And I don't know, it's just unfair, I think, to Stallone and to the makers of this film, especially when the audience doesn't seem to agree. That's I think one of the biggest points, that there's such a discrepancy. It's like The Last Jedi, it's like I can't make a video without mentioning that freaking movie or Star Wars. But The Last Jedi, the same thing. The critics loved it, but the fans, I guess it was the opposite of this. The fans were really 44%. I think it's still sitting at on Rotten Tomatoes. So, you guys could go on and check the reviews out or the audience score, some of the comments on the movie. It's been pretty widely received. It's been well received for the most part from an audience standpoint, aside from the critics who seem to be just bashing it for racism and bigotry. And I just think that's so extreme when the movie's not really even dealing with that. It's a specific cartel. It's a specific group of people that are criminals. He went after the sheriffs, the white sheriffs in the first movie. It's just, I don't know. Those are my thoughts of the film. I enjoyed it. I would say if you're a Rambo fan, then definitely go see it. It's got all the action. It keeps you going the whole way. It's pretty fast paced. It's a little slow in the beginning, but it picks up pretty good. And the whole last sequence is exactly what you are waiting for and expect the movie to turn into. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Have you seen the film? Are you a fan of it? Do you like the genre in general? Do you agree with some of the critics? Do you find that it is a little racist? And hey, look, if you really honestly feel that way, and you've got a good point of view and a good defense for that, then fine. I'm not gonna, I'm not trying to I'm not trying to force my opinion clearly on anyone. I'm just sharing mine and my reaction to what I feel is a little unjust here, a lot unjust here for the from the media and the critics' reviews. But anyway, let me know in the comments down below if you liked the video. Give it a thumbs up and share, subscribe, like. Till next time, lock the doors and hope Rambo doesn't come for you.